Just one moment, please. Good morning and welcome. We are the Program and Services Standing Committee of the Community Advisory Board under the Community Corrections Partnership, Safety and Realignment. Let's set the table, board members, and for those in the audience with some housekeeping items. For those in the public, please keep your participation on mute. For those on the phone, use *6 to mute and unmute. We'll hear comments first from the board and then from the public by raising your hand. Our purpose is to advance justice reinvestment and protect community investments. Some of our responsibilities are to recommend program-related policy around both existing and new funding opportunities with a focus on evidence practices, both locally, regionally, and nationally. Innovation and recommendations for implementation. We are here to engage providers to educate CAB and/or committee members about their work, outcomes, needs, and recommendations. We promote a structure for and an implementation of a comprehensive needs assessment for the county's reentry population, what's working and what's needed. Also to inform future program recommendations, funding, and allocations. We're here to participate in program and service-related RFP development process and panels by assignment from committee chair and/or CAB overall. We are grateful for those who are members of this committee and so appreciate their time commitment. Now on to our agenda. First of all, we'll begin with introductions, beginning with the program and services members. And may I ask Garyana to assist me?
Yes, Ozzy, did you want me to take roll?
Yes, please, thank you.
Ozzy Carter.
Present.
Latanya Thompson. Raina Moore.
Present.
And Raina Hurley.
Present.
Quorum is established. Meeting can continue.
Thank you. We'd also like introductions from the ORJ staff and then from others.
Hi, everyone. This is Patrice Guillory here from the Office of Reentry and Justice.
Good morning. My name is Garyana Youngblood, and I'm also with the Office of Reentry and Justice.
I'm Jill Ray with the Office of Supervisor Candace Anderson.
I always forget I'm supposed to consider myself staff, Ozzy. Nicole Green, Chair of Program Policy and Budget.
Do we have other individuals in our Zoom audience that would like to introduce themselves as well and the organization that they represent?
Hi, everyone. My name is Walanda Hughes. I'm from Loud Family Community Family Development.
Good morning, Janet Evans, Office of Education, Game Plan for Success.
Thank you. Moving on, are there any announcements? Any announcement from board members? Any announcement from individuals on Zoom? If not, I'd like to make an announcement. I'm home under the weather with a little something, not really sure what it is, hoarse and congested. I would like to wish all of you happy holidays and stay safe and stay warm. Moving on to our agenda. Is there any public comment on any item under the jurisdiction of the Community Advisory Board and not on this agenda? Hearing none. We'll move to item number 3, the approval of the minutes from the November 16th CAB Program and Services Subcommittee meeting. That's on pages 4 through 6. I will be looking for a motion and a second.
I motion that we move forward with the approval of the meetings from November 16th, 2023 meeting.
This is Rena Moore. I second the motion.
So moving on, Garyana, could you help us?
Yeah, I'll take a roll call vote.
Thank you.
Ozzy Carter,
Aye.
Latanya Thompson,
Aye.
Raina Moore,
Aye.
Raina Hurley.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item up is to discuss review list of services in Contra Costa County, which is attachment 2, pages 7 through 8.
So if I may, I would like to give a little bit of context on this piece here. I believe at you guys' last meeting, you all, after hearing from the various AB 109 community program providers, you all wanted to look at where was the distribution of services that were provided across those providers in various service areas. Some services are obviously delivered in-house while others are referred out. So I believe a few cabinets took an initial stab at creating a grid to sort of see where there's at least to see where services are, or how services are delivered across the different contracted providers. And then from there, that would help illustrate where there may be some gaps in services. Again, just among the community programs. What we don't have here are the county agencies. So just want to make that note. So I took what I believe was profitable over a grid and I try to spruce it up just a little bit. So we can certainly talk through the logic of this, and if hopefully I captured as much as what you all were looking for, but if not, I'm open to any feedback that you all have. So at the very top of this page here, you will see that the first row is titled Contracted Service Area. These are the service areas that are identified as the community program. So when every year, when CAB and all of the county agencies go through their funding request process, you would notice that there are only some specific service areas under the AB 109 community programs, which are these. These service areas are your reentry service hubs that are to be your one-stop navigation source for reentry services in West County and then for Central East, your housing service, your employment service, still legal aid, peer mentoring, and family reunification. The EVP next to housing and employment only identifies these as actual evidence-based program models. If you all may recall, ORJ went through great lengths to inform and train providers prior to the release of the RFPs for these areas so that we can solicit program providers who can implement actual evidence-based program models. So that's what that's for there. In the second row, titled AB 109 Community Program Providers, these are the actual organizations that are then operating these service areas. So we have our Reentry Success Center as our West County service hub operator, which is really operated through Rubicon programs. The reentry network that services East and Central County, operated by Health Right 360. We have Allow Family Community Development, which provides housing across all county regions. Employment, which is also provided through Rubicon programs, again, across all county regions. Area Legal Aid that provides the civil legal aid service across all county regions. Peer mentoring provided by Men and Women of Purpose, only in West County, and then family reunification across all county regions is Central Force. Then we have below, under the sort of title, Other Support Services, are a range of other service areas that these community programs have some connection to, that they're providing in-house, and in-house can mean anywhere from that staff, they have staff that's providing that service, or they've subcontracted that service and they're as part of their array of service offerings, and they refer individuals to those subcontractors. So, or another option is that they make their space available to then partner with or have space for co-location of other service providers. So that way that particular service is then available in their doors as folks are coming in, right? So there's not necessarily a formal relationship by way of a contract, but at least they may provide office space for a staff member of another agency to come in and work with clients there. So I'll pause there to see if folks have any questions in terms of the organization of this. Okay, hearing none. I can go down this list here and just show that we have a range of categories.
Excuse me, there's a question. I'm sorry, Patrice. There was a hand. Jill has.
Sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I took a while to find my hand raised and was waiting for the group to ask any questions. So on these, on this spreadsheet, Patrice, was this based on contract language or each CBO stating what they do?
A little bit of both. It's a little mix of both. So that's why I have here both referred and also in-house. Some of these contractors, given the sort of status or the nature of needs of the clients that have come in, they have also on their own made partnerships with other organizations. And so therefore they're ensuring that that ability to do that warm handoff is available to them. So you'll see, I can go through some of these where I can share of these providers where that is more prevalent than others.
So I guess I specifically, because I've seen the contracts for the Reentry Success Center and the network and Allow Family and those, but when I look at like Men and Women of Purpose, I'm thinking some of that stuff might be more referral than actual services provided.
Yes.
Okay, and then so my other question is this just with a CAB contract, or is this for all contracts held serving this population?
No, just the CAB contract.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you can see on, oh, it doesn't have numbers, rows. All of the X's at the bottom are the column, those X's reflect the reflect the service offering and whether it's provided in-house or referred out under that respective organization. So if we go over to under the title that says other support services, if you look at, yeah, thank you, Garyana, you can use the cursor for me. If you look at the second column after the words behavioral health, mental health, or such services, yeah, the first column after that. So that whole, now if you can run your cursor down that whole row, or the whole column, excuse me, all of that is considered what Reentry Success Center can offer and or provide through actual, whether it's through in-house or what they're able to refer out to. You see? And then we can go over to the Reentry Network, similar here. Same for Lao. Same for Rubicon.
Right, right. So I understand that whole concept. I understand that. I'm just wondering where, if there's any sort of assessment to the validity of what's being done, like data, like are they, how many referrals are they making? And I know with some of the contracts, we do have data metrics, but I'm not sure that they're all there. So I just really, so I mean, it's one thing, like I can say, I provide my children, roof, food, clothing, whatever, in any number of things, but I'm wondering if there's any evidence of proof that's shown that these various services are actually being provided or are successfully connecting. You know what I mean? Is that making sense?
No, you are. So those are, I would say, two different things. So we do have information in our safe data system in terms of the per contracted provider, the referrals that are being made out, as well as the referrals that are being made to them, right? So we could show that sort of referral flow. What we don't often have as clear cut is whether or not successful connection had been achieved for a couple of reasons. One is if they're referring out to an agency other than these listed here, if those agencies aren't in the safe system, then we have no way of knowing whether or not successful connection was made unless the referring agency updates that information there. And I have to be honest, that's not always consistent.
And then one last question, because I see Nicole's hands raised. When we say referral, are we talking actually like taking somebody by the hand and connecting them to somebody or handing them a phone number?
We're talking about it could be all the above and including an email contact to a staff member of the other agency that they're reaching out to. Nicole?
Oh, Jill was hitting all of my questions. So to be honest, she was she actually was hitting them all on the nail. And I just had a quick question. I know it's asking a lot, and I'm not sure programs and services is going to do that, but I do like the fact that you're outlining what they're contracted to do and what they said they did. And I know that was one of the conversations that we were having with Crawford and Latoya about that, is trying to identify, although someone says they do it, do they really do it? So is there a way, or will it be identified on here where it'll indicate, for example, like what does it say RSC, like for, the items that are actually contracted versus the items that they just say they do? Will it be identified on there to be able, because right now it's just X's. So for someone coming in here that don't know any of those programs, that are just within the community and don't understand any of this, they will look at this and assume that they do all of that, or maybe they're contracted to do all of that. So will it be broken down even more to explain that?
I'll have to figure out how to do that in as simple of enough format. But we can work on that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Yes, this is Latanya. I'm in agreement with Jill. I have a lot of notes, so I'm not going to touch on them, but we do need to capture more information. And I'm thinking in 2024, we circle back around and we actually ask questions that are relevant to ensure that the needs of those that are being incarcerated are being met once they're released, such as transportation. Is it only when they are being released? Are we providing transportation to and from court? Are we providing transportations or other methods for people to go back and forth to interviews? With housing, we know that we have housing, we know that there's a shortage of housing, but we also need to document that on average, there's a wait list of 58 people. And so even though the needs are being documented as being met, We often don't have the resources of funds, so they're not actually being met. Also identifying like, what actual services that they are providing, and even update this where it says other supporting services to maybe the X, instead of being black for when they're referring out, is red or orange. So at a quick glance, we know what they're actually providing versus where they are referring. And then to even be able to document who they're referring to, because then we can see the need of it. And as Jill indicated, I think we do need to track and be like, if there's X amount of inmates in West County, how many of those are actually being serviced? And how often are they being serviced? It's one thing for me to say that I'm going up there. How often am I going, daily, weekly? Am I seeing one person, three persons? What programs do I offer? So I think that there's a room for us to kind of go deeper to make sure, and this is really to make sure that the program is successful and that we have what they need as far as tools and resources to reduce the chances, options of them going back if we have something that is together. Even having where we have the contact person's name and phone number. We've heard that sometimes it's not easy to actually get in contact with someone. So if they reach out to Rubicon and say, I'm not able to reach someone at Man and Woman Purpose, he'll say, no problem. I have Renee's number, email, I'll get right on it. I just think we can fine tune it. And actually, instead of doing here's a phone number and name, actually being the point of contact where we're setting up appointment so that we can find out if it's our system or if it's actually on the inmate not showing up for the services that we are providing.
So I do want to, before we go to other questions, I do want to clarify what was the request or the direction to us on this,
which was wanting to see at a glance of what was the service offerings so that we can identify where there's some potential gaps. So some of the details that you're looking for and that I'm hearing others are raising, which I think are really great points, are more to do with the utilization of service and how service flow is being carried out across different service providers. That, again, that's something you can start to look into, but in terms of what was asked for today, this is what was put together and provided.
Jana, I see your hand.
Thank you, Ozzy. Even at the quick glance of this, I'm just going to pick one for example. So it has 4 X's on the very bottom of in custody pre-release services, but it doesn't really tell me what are they doing in custody pre-release. It just says they offer it. So I also think it would be good to identify what is it that they're doing in custody, or for women's services, what is it that they do for women's services? For employment, right? We have multiple people doing employment. So what are each agencies doing for employment? Because I think it's hard to decide where the gaps are if we don't understand what each of these entities are using their funding for and are providing services in their different locales or within the jail.
Thank you, Jana. Is there any other discussion?
I raised my hand down. I'm sorry, I meant to leave it back up. Not to add more, Patrice. But I just want to make sure that when data is being looked at those, especially when you say in custody, I hear a lot just with West County, but there's 3 major locations, right? There's West County, there's Marsh Creek, and there's Martinez, and people fluctuate between the 3. Yes, the women are at West County, but they fluctuate between all 3. So we're looking at data for those that are in custody to look at all of them, because there are people that are returning to West County that are residing at the other 2 as well. So then that data will be missed if you're trying to get an idea. Like the time you had a very good thing that you point out regarding transportation, like getting picked up, court dates, looking at all facilities, because I know that a lot of the providers, they go to all the facilities, right? So kind of looking at it, making sure that if we're going to be looking at that, if you're going to look at that data, keep those in mind too, because the providers do touch on those other facilities as well. That's it.
Thank you. Any other discussion? If not, I do have a couple of questions. And I've always been told there's no such thing as a stupid question. Because if I don't know the answer, somebody else probably doesn't know the answer either. Anyway, my question is, what's the possibility of the Community Advisory Board looking at contracts? I know that's probably privy, but just so that we can get familiar with the verbiage.
Yeah, I don't know. I have to check in about that. I guess I would want to know what are the specific things you're looking for from some of these documents are pretty, lengthy and meaty. So, I guess it would depend on what is it that you're really trying to decipher from the contract language.
For me, not having ever seen the contract, I just kind of like to know how it's constructed, the information that the CBO has to include specifically around the services that they're going to provide, whether or not the services that they're going to provide, whether it's spelled out within that specific contract. Just relative to be able to look at it and see how it's constructed.
So every contract that we have does include a component called the service plan, which does articulate at great length how the services are to be delivered, what certain deliverables are required of them. So that is included in each of the contracts.
Sorry to just jump in, but it occurs to me that maybe rather than the contract, because those are a lengthy document, but maybe just the RFP that was responded to details out the services that we're looking for, correct?
Yes, so even then, that's our
request of what we would like to see. Their actual then proposals,
kind of spell out how they intend to implement it, right? And then we take that language and transfer it into contract language to say that you will do this, you will do that. So when the providers came and offered their presentations, right, explaining how they go about their services, I feel like that's probably the most what's the best word for it?
Most efficient way to share what they are required to do
And what they are to do to fully understand how the service is to be implemented. So I don't know if you felt like those presentations still left you with some unanswered questions.
For me, I think when we originally did it, it was more for me to have an understanding of what they did, but I didn't ask the questions that give me clarity on how it directly impacts the inmates and the need that we have as a whole. So if they said we provide housing, we're like, oh, you provide housing, versus asking, is it for West County, Central County? Is it for an individual? Is it for a family? Is there a wait list? Those type of things we didn't ask, we didn't go deeper to have a better understanding. When they said provide services, oftentimes we didn't ask, are you actually providing the service or actually providing the referral for the service?
Yeah, so I want to say I'm almost certain that most of the providers actually included that information as it relates to like which region of the county they have their services available to them. If they did not speak on any in custody or pre-release service, 9 times out of 10, that means that they are either not actively engaging in custody with anyone, or they just don't offer that service. And if memory serves me right, at the time of the RFPs, the jails were already shut down anyway from allowing visitors to come in. So I do recall and remember that even through the proposals, we instructed them to be very thoughtful and mindful about what their response would be, if any, if they were planning to say, oh, we're going to do some in custody services. If you had not had conversations with the sheriff's office in terms of how they were planning to come back online to have program providers come inside, then it would be best not to plan your budget around any of that kind of stuff, right? So, so yeah, I would say one maybe suggestion is that we get, which is a part of this, packet, is reviewing some of the questions that you guys had. If you wanted to do some additional follow-up to fully understand how the services are to be, delivered.
I think that would be helpful, and also if we can review, and it may be discussed later in the meeting, the data from the surveys to kind of combine them together. Like, this is what the need is for those that are incarcerated, and this is what the service is for those that are providing service, to also see, so that we're not just keep revisiting it because we haven't taken this information data in, that's gonna actually impact what we're looking for and asking for. And I definitely want to make sure, like, one of the people that did the presentation that stuck out was the need for someone to be there for those that are Hispanic in court, to let them know what resources we have. And so that was the question that we asked in the 11th hour, but all those before the 11th hour, we never asked, is there anyone in your office that's fluent in another language? And do you provide literature, written, or what services do you provide?
I would like to ask a question. I was not present when this grid was being created, and I understand that it was information that was gleaned from the presentations. My question is whether or not this can be submitted to the CBOs and ask them to break down their services, whether it's done in-house or referred out to, and have them also listing who they are referring their services to. And it's not to add any pressure, it's just to kind of like get a big picture and overall viewpoint so that we can better understand the services, because I can understand this, but I also understand that there's some things that are going behind the scenes that I don't see here, but I would like to have it broken down with clarity so that I could understand it. What services they are providing in-house and the services that they're referring out and who they are referring it out to. So in summing that up, my question is, can we generate this particular, maybe not in this type of format, but in a format that's user-friendly, nothing that's going to throw up any red flags that we're trying to micromanage, but only with that we want to collectively partner in using very sensitive phrases when we create this in order to glean what it is we really want to look at.
I think it would be helpful to break it down. And we know that there's a need for housing, education, employments, mental health, those things that we've actually had put on the survey. I think it would be, if you provide this service and answer these questions, if no, you could skip to blah, blah, blah. So a lot of the information, though it may be a lengthy form, it won't pertain, they won't have to complete everything, only the things that pertain to the service that they provide. And then when it refers to, what company for what services, and then we'll look for that agency to provide the details, not that one that's actually doing the referrals.
So if I can offer some context to these X's, if that helps. It will take up some time, but I can do that now if that's what folks want to do.
Yeah.
A packet we have for the partnering agencies, and it lists which services. I'm wondering, would that be helpful if we could all see that?
You said the package.
I see your hand, Ms. Hughes.
Hi, everyone. Yes, my hand was up. Thank you. I wanted to also add that Lao Family does provide some in-custody pre-release services by working with Game Plan for Success, going into the jails to provide workshops and information to the justice served clients there, and also provide pre-intake when they're coming out. So they have a sense of where they might want to go, and they've already have that pre intake done, which makes it easier to apply for our services once they're in.
Thank you for that information.
Not necessarily government, it can't hear you, on each agency, what they do. what they
Are we
provide.
capturing that information?
Yes,
Thank you. So moving forward, I have a question for you, Patrice. Is it possible that we can move on forwarding this a document or a document similar that's constructed specifically for the CBOs, whereas they can provide the information themselves?
sure. Again, the only thing that is a question mark for me is so these areas in the gray, these were the service areas that I believe CAB members that came up with, because that's the document that was sent over to us. So I would need to know if these are the areas that you care most about, I'm assuming, or if there are other things, I'm not sure. And then, we can comb through their contracts to see which of these are referred out as a warm handoff versus those that are provided in-house by their actual staff versus those that are subcontracted out when they have a relationship, a formal agreement with another organization within that service is provided to their clients, you know. So where I'm a little stuck is just trying to get a little bit more clarity on, or not clarity, greater specificity of what services or service areas you're interested in understanding
That they provide. That makes sense. I'm guessing that that's what this,
because I'm going off of what was originally asked of us,
which was to
provide a chart of what services are offered
across the different providers.
to identify where there's some gaps. But I'm hearing now that you guys want to go deeper than that to fully understand
what is being referred
out versus what is actually
provided
in-house. Am I capturing that right?
Yes.
And I think we also, I would think we would also need to include what services are pre-release and which services are post-release.
I think that's a great addition to the report out. Thank you for that, LaTanya. So in wrapping this item up, is there any other?
Jenna had her hand raised.
Oh, I can't see everyone. Okay, Jana, sorry.
No, I'm good, thanks.
So can someone restate the direction for us, please? To be sure that we're giving you what exactly you're looking for. Now that you've seen this and you felt that this, you needed more information, what specific information are you looking for that we could bring back to you?
LaTanya, would you like to give an overview of that, please?
And for clarification, I'm not saying that we have to pass the whole ball to you.
Yeah, but we have to facilitate.
Okay.
So we do need clear direction.
So we would want information on pre-release and post-release. We would also want more information on the actual services that are being provided. So for instance, it says coaching. Is it life coaching? Is it family coaching, relationship coaching? So that we have a better understanding of what that looks like. We also would like a better understanding, clarification around referral and what that looks like. If it is simply providing the person a name and number, or if it is a warm handoff via email, phone call, where the agency is making the connection with the other agency. And then if the form could be updated so that those that are outside services, not in-house, is a different color X in the box. So at a quick glance, we can identify which ones are being referred out. And trying to make sure I captured everything.
Did you want the info too is if they are referring people to other CBOs, yeah, which CBOs they're referring them to?
Yes. I don't know if there's a way for us to capture, like on average, whether it's monthly or in a year, how many people they are seeing, just so that we have an idea. And can take that information and compare it to the surveys.
One more.
The other thing I'm interested in is if they provide services in any other language other than English. Okay, Jill, I'm sorry.
No, no worries. I'm sorry. I thought you were done. I should have waited longer. The other question I have is, I guess some verification. You know, you said some of this is self-reported. You know, is there verification on each one of these items that they're actually providing that service? Like, for example, during the pandemic, a lot of those services weren't provided, even though that they were maybe stated in the contract. Or, you know, just somewhere along the lines, some form of verification that's actually being provided.
Like for example, like for housing and homeless services, like what are they providing? Like, isn't it for the specific person, or is it for their family? Like how to, like more detailed information?
Also, like where it says housing, are they providing services to everybody in West County? And are those houses in West County? Or are the houses only in one part of Contra Costa, but we will service anybody as long as you're being released from one of the jails?
Yeah, so that's why I asked earlier, I can give some context on the X's if folks would like me to do that. It will take some time, but I can do that now if you all like.
Yes, please.
So some of these X's came from, I believe, following all of the presentations with CAB members heard the various providers sharing what they provide, right? So that's one thing. Some of the others are actually services that they are contracted to do. Others are from our own ORJ's own observation of what they are providing in-house.
So I'll start with the first column, which is the Reentry Success Center, where it has that they have behavioral health or mental health or SUD services. This is where they have those services available. They do have a partnership with AODS, where a substance use disorder counselor does come into their facility or into the Success Center. I believe it's not on a weekly basis, every other week, to work directly with clients that are there at the center. The employment services that are offered is where they're able to house an employment readiness coach or career readiness coach that is supported or provided by Rubicon programs. So because the Reentry Success Center is a center that is operated by
programs, which also happens to be the employment provider, they're able to leverage that support within house. The coaching was selected because that is typically the language that is used for a lot of the staff that are case management staff that are providing support to clients, both at the Success Center as well as the Rubicon program. So you'll hear them say, we have a reentry coach, an impact coach, a wellness coach. And they're using this terminology to show that case management doesn't necessarily have to simply be transactional, but that the staff person works with the individual utilizing certain EVPs such as motivational interviewing and things of that nature to really draw out the information that they need from the client to best help them in those respective areas. So that's why the coaching aspect was selected here. In terms of transportation, they are utilizing some of their resources to cover the cost for rideshare for clients that either exiting from the jails and or to other appointment places or spaces. Financial literacy, same here. They do because of their partnership with Rubicon programs, they're often able to connect, right? They may not have the staff person at their facility, but they're able to connect their client to a financial coach, which is then housed at Rubicon programs. So I just want to pause real quick to just show how there are a variety of ways in which services are connected and networked in the background. So that's why when I'm asking a lot of questions about what specific information you want, you just keep that in mind that it's not very linear, it's kind of webbed and integrated. Parenting and family services. This is again through a couple of ways. Through their relationship with Centerforce, where Centerforce, who does the family reunification service, also does fatherhood, parenting courses at programs. So therefore, at the center, folks are able to then connect with that resource that is made available at Rubicon. Tech support. Tech support means that laptops, hotspots, things of that nature are made available to clients through a separate funding from probation. This was made available to the Reentry Success Center, who then partnered with the Reentry Network to disseminate these laptops during the time of COVID to these individuals. Only if, with the caveat there is, it's just not a willy-nilly distribution. They had to already be engaged in either programming at the Success Center, the network, or enrolled in vocational training or some kind of educational component to be able to utilize that resource. Housing and homelessness. So this was a category that was on the original grid that you all put together. I wasn't quite clear on what was the amount of fact they were separated out to two different things. So I just kind of combined those together. But all to say, for the Success Center in the space of whether it's housing placement or connection to housing services, they often refer out. They do not have a subcontract with the sober living environment or any kind of transitional house. They will refer out to GRIP, which is Greater Richmond, something. I forget the name of that. They're a housing provider there in Richmond. They also connect folks with H3 through their housing resources, things of that nature. So that resource is referred out. For women's services, they, I believe, are restarting what they had for the men group, which was called Alpha Men. They were restarting an Alpha women's group. So this is sort of has a restorative lens to it. That was a women's only group for some of their clients that were coming through their facility. IDs and documentation, that's a huge part of really what all of these provide. So you'll see X's all across. Wherever this is an issue, typically that provider has a voucher or some kind of mechanism to that will allow them to cover the cost receive identification and whatever important documentation. So usually that is a question asked during the intake and enrollment process. And then in terms of in custody and pre-release services, there was a time where they were entering into custody by way of GPS, and then also having it was like a letter writing sort of campaign where they were then sending letters into the jails, trying to engage with folks before their release. So that's kind of the context. That's an example of the context that I can give now on these X's. I'm happy to still follow up on what you just all of the data points that you're requesting or further clarification or explanation that you stated earlier, Tanya. So I don't know, was that helpful at all? And I'm happy to keep going, but I just wanted to at least share that I am able to provide context on why these X's were selected the way they were here.
It was very helpful because I'm visual. So I think based off like what we said, so for instance, where it says coaching, and just for the purpose of us being in person, let's say that coaching is number A as in apple, number 15. So if we had coaching bold, and then under coaching, which would be A16, it said like life coach, and then 18 would be like wellness coach, and then 19, so that we could actually see like under coaching what services fall underneath it. It'd give us a better idea of like career coach, life coach, whatever kind of coach. And I think it would keep it simple enough, but and then because coaching would be the category, and then underneath it, it would break down what type of coaching. I think it would help visually at a quick glance.
I agree.
So just to recap, Patrice, could you help us in defining the areas that we are going to continue to include in this grid?
I didn't have that.
Okay.
Yeah, these, when you said areas that you want to include in the grid, I'll just repeat what I heard that I wrote down, and then you all can clarify even further. I heard that you all wanted to identify which services are offered pre-release versus those that are post-release. I heard that you wanted a description of each, or like a clarifying description of each of the services. And I'm assuming we're saying services here. You're talking about the services that are on this page. Or no, I don't know. I heard that you wanted more referral information, or just a distinction in how referrals are made, whether it's a warm handoff, if it's a phone call, if it's an email. I also heard which are referred out versus which ones are provided in-house. What other CEOs are the service providers referring out to? Annual service data to see who's receiving the services. If services are provided in other languages, verification info that though these are self-reported, is there a way that we can verify this? And then who's being housed? I have who's being housed versus homeless services. Oh, no, okay, the categories of those who are housed, if it's families and individual.
So are there any other additional items that we'd like to look for, asking the other program and services members before we move on?
Like for women's services, what does that mean? Like,
Great question. The way and again, these were the service areas that cabinets were sent to me. So the way I interpreted it was that, is this a service that is predominantly provided to women or a women-only service?
Reentry Success Center was selected because, as I mentioned, of the out group.
And then if you go all the way over, Center Force was selected, though not necessarily through their family reunification service,
but through their subcontract, maybe I should have done their reentry network.
through their subcontract with the reentry network.
They are to provide
Gender responsive case management services. So the way that that works is that the case management staff at the reentry network,
any of the referrals that they receive that are women,
they immediately refer them out to Center Force to work with them. They start working with them while they're in custody, if they're in custody at the time of the referral, or those out in the community.
I see Jill has her hand up.
Yes, Jill, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, Patrice, when you mentioned about the referrals, I didn't hear you say whether or not, you know, you did the warm handoff, but I guess one of the questions I have is, are they just handing people a phone number? Or are they actually making that connection for them?
Yeah, so I said it's a combination, it could be a combination of both.
Right.
So
there are instances where there's a phone number, though I'll say, let me start with this. Because all of these providers are on SAFE, our Salesforce-based system, which is supposed to facilitate referrals back and forth to each agency, right? The intended goal is that when an agency submits a referral through SAFE, the receiving agency then takes that information and should be reaching out to that client immediately, right?
and the only way that referring agency would know to send a referral is because hopefully in real time, but I know that doesn't always happen, that when they're meeting with the client, they're identifying what the needs are and are explaining to them what other services or programs are made available to them, and that they will send a referral on their behalf.
Right. Right.
So
No, yeah, just to clarify, when you were going through the next steps on what to provide more, you mentioned whether or not the agency is doing a warm handoff, email or whatever. I think the question is, are they doing, which to me, an email, SAFE, all of those things are a warm handoff versus just handing a client a name or a phone number for an agency.
Yeah.
Are you following what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. That one is more intentional and has more steps to it, more thought to it, and not leaving it to the client to figure it out on their own versus leaving it to the client to figure it out on their own. Yeah.
So
No,
I mean, people may say they're making referrals, but I don't honestly, I mean, for me, even if I'm trying to connect somebody, I don't just hand them a phone number. I actually contact the person and make that connection. So I guess if there's a way to when you are asking for that information on your list, is to really hone down, are they really doing a warm handoff using one of those many methods that you mentioned, which was really connecting individuals versus handing the individual a phone number and saying, here, call H3.
I will say in those instances where, for example, I'll lift up the reentry service hubs where with the center or the network,
specifically the center, because the concept behind the center is to have as many services available in-house as possible. So part of the referring or warm handoff that is happening is if they are able to set up co-location opportunities or office hours where, say, someone from Bay Area Legal Aid is coming in every 2 weeks at this date, at this time, client A I understand these are some of your legal, or maybe you're having some issues around child support. Very Legal Aid is able to help you. Alice from Legal Aid is coming in on Tuesday. Do you want me to let them know that you're coming?
Yeah, do you want to see them when they're coming? I can let them know.
And you be sure to be here kind of thing, right? The way that warm handoff happens is oftentimes much more effective and efficient when the agencies have space and are able to do so together. In the case of the reentry network, because a lot of their case management is happening out in the field, those case managers may very well connect with those other agencies and say, and tell the client, meet me over here at, I'll use, even at times county agencies, right?
That's awesome.
Meet me over at the forensic mental health clinic. Since you're closer there, I'll be there and we can meet together kind of situation, right? So
It all depends on how the service is, their service model is delivered, how it's rolled out.
I will say that very infrequently are you seeing, maybe with the exception of Laos, Yolanda, you can speak to this, but well, I'll say with the exception of Lao and maybe Rubicon, most of these other agencies are willing to meet the client where they're at. So then that helps facilitate that warm handoff process. So it's not too common where they're coming through the door, getting a phone number and then sending you on your way.
There's typically some staff member that's meeting them where they're at.
Now, Lao might be a little bit different. I'll let you explain how your intake process goes. Yolanda, if you're still on, how do folks get to you, where you're able to place them in housing? I know Rubicon programs, because theirs is a structured set of workshops over the course of a couple of weeks. So it is imperative that the person comes in, right? And even in that case, because they have a very holistic model with various coaches, they may not always refer out because a support is already built in. So those then supports are available to them at the Rubicon location. Very Legal Aid has usually been good about meeting folks at a different location, or having folks come in, I believe, at their Richmond office.
Is there any more discussion on this item?
Well, I think, can we just add dates and operation for business so that we're not contacted before or after, thinking that they're not responding or if someone's closed on a Monday, you know?
Are you hours of operation?
Yeah, that's it. Okay.
So Patrice, my question is to you. Do we have a time frame for actually revising this grid and potentially reviewing it and then sending it out to the CBOs?
I don't have a timeline at the moment. Let me check in with my team because there's also some data related points. And I want to be sure that we can be ready and prepared to give you some quality information, quality data. So I don't have a specific timeline at the moment.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion before we move on to our next item? Item number 5 on our agenda, to discuss finalized questions for CBO providers, attachment 3, pages 9 through 10. So are there any questions or discussions around this document? Hopefully we've all had time to review it. I would ask that Patrice actually assists us because I know probably there's some things that we can ask and the verbiage and how we would ask it. I just want to make sure it's clear and not intimidating and that we might be able to get the answers if it's no types of boundaries crossed.
Yeah, so I think this was a follow-up from, forgive me, I can't recall the exact timeline when these questions came up originally, but following the presentations of all of the providers, which some, I believe some of their information may have answered some of these questions, but we're, as was articulated as a next step from your previous meeting, I think you guys wanted to go back and review these questions and see if these are things that you like to receive from, or answers you'd like to receive from the providers.
Patrice, can I shed some light on it real quick?
Sure.
So this was originally presented in policy and budget, and we felt that it would be something better utilized with you all. It was during the time of when you guys were doing your presentations, and me, Crawford, and Ozzy I have to give credit to Ozzy, all got together and put questions together that we thought would work great with the work groups. However, after actually looking at this and really digging deep on how we want to do our work groups around the recommendation, these questions came up that probably fit better with your subcommittee. And they came up after you started your presentation. So that's why they're back here. Because we thought that it was something, instead of us at policy and budget using it, we thought maybe it'd be something better that you all could probably do, as it was tied into what your visions were for policy and, I keep saying policy, programs and services. Oh, that's all.
Thank you. Any discussion from the subcommittee? Thoughts?
So so we could have like example of what this will look like once implemented, once we have the information, or we then working with the other department in regards to funding. Is this talking a lot about funding and breakdown, things of that nature? So what would be our next action once we have this information?
Well, these are from my vantage point are some specific questions that we can present that are a little bit more intense than the questions from our surveys, our annual program and services survey. These questions touch on a lot of the in-depth details of the organization and their performance metrics and transparency and accountability. The need to collect data, because with that data, we're better equipped to see where our gaps are, to see what is needed and to see what's working and see what isn't working. And I think those are some of the things that we've included that are our objectives and goals as a community advisory board. And we really want to hone in on the data, because that's from what I'm hearing and what I've understood, there's some things that we need to just dig deeper in, just so that the board members can be educated and know exactly what's happening. These questions are presented to see and get discussion from the subcommittee members to see if these, in conjunction with ORJ, to see if these questions have validity and if these questions can be asked in some manner. Not looking for maybe an answer today, but something that we can utilize for our next steps and to dig deep into it, maybe eliminating some of the questions, but definitely holding the accountability and the transparency for those who are being funded. And I think we need to get the maximum benefit for our funds to make sure that our clients who need the services are getting the services and actually have a full vantage point. I know it's probably a hard question to ask for their contracts and what they're actually inclusive of, but maybe some of these questions we have answered or have been answering, but what the ultimate goal is to really equip and educate our board members to what's really happening so that we can move forward confidently in knowing, having more information to better oversee the AB 109 funding, which we are charged with, but you have to understand it from the total lens. I'd like to open it up for discussion. Well, actually, it's 12:28, but we can have a brief discussion, a little input on what other members would like to see, if this is something that they could agree with or would like to work on for 2024. Just leaving this as a guide, a future reference to the things that program and services questions that they might want to ask to get a more realistic vantage point from our CBOs. And seeing that, is there any comment from anyone?
For me, I totally understand it. I understand how this would be a benefit to us if we're asking questions about the services they provide and they're asking for additional funds. I think when it's talking about give us a breakdown of like everything that they're doing, that seems like, are we really taking on that component of it?
That could be a discussion item to ask moving forward. How many of these questions, because as I said earlier, a lot of these questions have been answered in presentations, but to dig deeper, we would have to decide, or the standing Program and Services Subcommittee would have to make a decision if these are some questions that next year they would be vested in asking the community-based organizations. And that will be left to 2024. Hearing no comments. Well, does anyone have, oh, Nicole, I see your hand.
No, I was just going to add to the time because I understand what she's pointing out. And I was going to say, don't focus too much on the well, thank y'all allowed for me speaking. Don't focus too much on the funding part of it. Like Patrice and Ozzy says, some of these things have already been looked at. Some of those things are been looking on our side, but there was just since we didn't utilize all the questions, like some of these questions we touched on policy and budget, I just sent the document back to you guys in case there were questions on there that you wanted to use because it was a great document. But you are right about the funding part of it. So in collaboration with policy and budget, some of these questions will be answered and some of this stuff have been answered. But I totally get the question that you have because the way the document is typed out, it looks more focused on the funding part of it. But you are right. Your goal and your focus is something different. And we on our side, we are trying to get that funding aspect of it. And some of these questions Justin and I are currently addressing doing our committee. So I just wanted to point that out because I totally understood what she was asking and just make sure that I pin that there so that you know that yes, some of these things we are working on our side.
Thank you for that. So asking the question to the subcommittee, do you feel that this document is something that you'd like to keep on for our next steps for 2024? To revise it and review it, making the necessary adjustments to fit the questions for future site visits, when the community-based organizations come in and give presentations, the committee members could also utilize this to ask some of the questions, just leaving it in your hands and asking if that's something that would be beneficial. I'm open for suggestions. We're running into overtime. Are there any comments?
Yes, so there is some information on here that would be very helpful as we move into 2024. So we will use some of the questions when interacting with the different agencies. Renee?
Thank you, LaTanya. So is it correct for me to say that we would include this document as part of our the next steps for 2024?
We
To
will include it and use portions of it.
portions of it.
I don't want to say we're using all of it, but we will use portion of the form. I don't want to say that we're going to take everything on the form, but we will. I don't want to give the assumption that we're using the form in its entirety, but there's a lot of valuable information we will be moving forward with on the form.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. So is it safe for me to say that we'll use this to be edited and formatted?
Make it our own. Yes.
Yes, for program and services for 2024 as part of the things or the items or questions for the upcoming, for the year. Going to have a great year,
Yes.
2024. So moving on to number 6, our next steps. One of the things for the next steps would be to discuss finalized questions for CBO providers. Any other next steps from the committee?
Not at this time.
If nothing heard, we'll adjourn to the next subcommittee meeting, which is February 15th, 2024 at 11 a.m. Happy holidays and Happy New Year.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you.
Wait, we skipped the whole month of January?
2024 to everyone.